Welcome, Ali Gilbert, the queen of
Hello.
normalising donor talk, who shares her initial with the anogenital distance. You can tell us more about that a little bit later on. But I figured I would set the tone of this interview right there. So, Ali, you're a fitness professional with a firm niche in men's health, and you enable men to get as resilient and fit as possible through training and nutrition, or in your own words, you get men jacked. Awesome, love this. So much time for it. So you're from Connecticut, I believe, where I hear there are an abundance of golf courses, and you developed a firm focus on golf fitness and providing both in-person and remote coaching for men as well. So we met last year for the first time in Florida, the lovely Florida, at your first ever Silverback Summit, and that was a phenomenal event. I really, really enjoyed it. You've got a bit more news about that, so can you just talk us through what's going on with the next Silverback Summit event that you've got coming up, Ali?
Of course. First, I got to say that was probably the best introduction I've ever had with my initials. I love
What?
that.
You can't not mention
I'll
that in
explain
someone's
that.
bio.
I know it's hilarious. Oh my God, I love that. So, with the Silverback Summit that we did here in Florida in October, it took off very well. And I think one of the reasons that you enjoyed coming was because we were able to talk openly and freely about pretty much anything in men's health, which I really loved for everyone to feel that level of comfort. So we are doing another in person one in November in Austin, Texas. And before that, I'm doing not one, but two virtual summits. So our first one is going to be the first weekend in May, and we have 25 speakers pretty much all across the board. I think everybody from the one in Florida, in addition to other people that I trust in the fitness and the men's health space, they're all going to be doing talks. So half of them are regular talks that are recorded themselves, and then half of them are going to be in person interviews that I did with a lot of the experts. So it's kind of like a mishmash. So people can kind of get the experience of sitting in on an interview where I'm just shooting the shit or somebody actually doing a talk. But it's a wealth of knowledge. These guys I've all known for years. They're amazing at what they do. I literally cannot wait for this. And then that will kind of be the springboard to our next virtual in August, which is going to be Silverback Unspoken, which is going to be even more taboo subjects within the men's health world. And that will pretty much get everybody really excited for the in person one in Texas. So I can't wait.
Ali, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, it was quite the introduction last year when I came along to the event in Florida. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I think I mentioned to you that shortly afterwards I went to the International Society for Sexual Medicine that was down the way in Miami. And I have to say, the forum for discussion, like no question was a silly question, and I mean that in like, yeah, you got, there were occasional ribbings for the British girl asking the sort of rather straight laced question at the back there and stuff, but it was completely, it was a really, really good learning experience. It was really good to see the fitness industry and the medical worlds coming together and actually openly talking. And one of the things I'm always really surprised about is how guys, when they start on TRT, are kind of almost a little bit, I ask them how they are once they've been started their treatment, and some of these guys have started from a really tough place, really super low testosterones, where it's been impacting their marriage, their work. The last thing that they're thinking about at this time is actually their physique, and they come back in and they're kind of looking at me, you've got a bit of a spark in their eye again, and marriage is doing better, work's doing better, and then you're like, so how's it going in the gym? They're kind of like looking over their shoulder like, oh, can we talk about this? Because actually, they're concerned about it seeming like it being a performance enhancing aspect, when actually I think it's a really good thing to be able to celebrate as part of your treatment, that actually, you're getting some physical benefits. And I think it's something that we don't need to be quite so shy about. And actually, we can talk about optimizing that, and optimizing those benefits that you can get from that testosterone replacement therapy. So I guess that's kind of where you're coming in at this as well, isn't it? So how do you support your guys that are having that additional help?
So a lot of them, when they do come to me, they kind of know what they're getting into because they know I'm an advocate for testosterone replacement. I'm very pro TRT. However, it's not like everyone who comes to me, I'm like, yep, you need testosterone and you need testosterone. Like, even though that probably is true at some point in their life, they will need it. A lot of guys have this preconceived notion that if they go on it, it might be cheating or it might be some other social stigma attached to it where they're doing something wrong or looked down upon. And they may not be experiencing the changes positively that they wanted to see in the gym. Now, could that be related to lower testosterone? Absolutely. Is it more related to what they're eating and how they're training? Probably. So we have to take care of that side of it first, which has to be taken care of regardless if somebody goes on testosterone. So I have like an approach that I have nicknamed GPP for TRT, which means general physical prep to get a guy resilient to handle testosterone a lot better. So this involves taking care of their training program and their nutrition and really getting them dialed in to where they don't have to go through the cycle of crashing their calories, which guys do as well, even though women are the ones who are usually pegged as the ones who go low cal. But a lot of guys undereat for what they're doing in the gym and they overtrain and they do very high intensity workouts. And then they wonder why they feel horrible because when you're doing all of this output, your body's not like, yeah, I think we'll procreate today. Your body's like, I just want to keep you alive.
Yeah.
So it's not going to give you rock hard boners and make you feel like, this animal and whatever if you're not giving it enough fuel. So that alone can tank someone's testosterone if they do it for a long time and chronically restrict calories. So we get their calories up, we get their performance up in the gym, and then we can say to ourselves, cool, if getting you sleeping better, getting you eating better, and then performing better in the gym, it's kind of a byproduct that adding testosterone just ends up being kind of the polish that makes a man whole and helps him optimize his entire life versus relying on testosterone as the panacea to fix everything that he sees as wrong at that moment.
Yeah.
It's actually just a part of that full whole optimization.
Yeah, and I guess like a part of that is also about mindset and sort of challenging beliefs that they might have had beforehand. Because, like you say, it's really common to sort of like work as hard as you can, but actually, when your body and your mind is in that much of a stress position the whole time, then, like you say, yeah, they're not going to be thinking about the whole picture. Are there any sort of particular techniques, any specific diet plans and things like that that you're following? Is there, or is it very tailor made for each individual?
It's pretty customized, but I will say there is a general approach. If a guy is over 20% body fat, I tend to start him on a lower carbohydrate diet because he's more likely to not tolerate carbs as well and have some insulin resistance issues. So we kind of take the glucose or the sugar load off his cells by lowering carbs, getting him exercising, doing aerobic training, which guys are like afraid of. They think, oh my God, my muscles are going to fall off. I can't do cardio. Like I'm going to lose my gains. And it's like so not true. Like, oh my God, like the more fit you are aerobically, the better you can recover, the better you'll sleep, the more food you can eat, but also the more your body will actually use fat and carbs for energy and break it down efficiently. So then as he gets leaner, then we can start to add carbohydrates back in. So it's somewhat ass backwards from like the mainstream media is like cut carbs, add cardio as you go on. And I start with more cardio. I start lower carb and then I take cardio away and add carbs, which usually confuses people so much. But it works really well because the leaner you get,
Yeah.
what's that?
Sorry, I was just going to say, is that quite a big challenge to mindset? Do you have to really gain trust first? Or I guess that when people are coming to you, they already know your methods. Or what do you find? How do you think it works out like that for you?
Sometimes they're very hesitant, but then I'm reiterating to them, like, you hired me for a reason. I need you to trust me They've seen the social proof, they know what I can do. And I have a team of great coaches that can help me now where we can, pretty much customize anything for anybody. So at first they're kind of like confused, but then they're like, all right, I trust you and everything. Because I explained, like, as a guy gets leaner, like, the more muscle you have, it's more like the more storage compartments you have for fuel. So carbs are stored as glycogen. So if we have more muscles, we can eat more carbs and store it for fuel, and then we actually look bigger and fuller. But when you are more overweight or have a lot of stored energy or body fat, you're not going to store carbohydrates as fuel. It would be more stored as body fat. And this is not carbs alone, this is like any excessive calories. So as he leans out, he tolerates carbohydrates better. His body accepts it a lot better. And so he will use it a lot better as well as energy. Carbs are delicious. Guys want to eat them as they get in shape. So when that starts clicking, then the buy-in really has taken place because they're like, all right, now I get it. Like, cool.
Yeah. Okay. And so when you're taking a guy from dealing with sort of 20-25% body fat, do you have like a particular time frame that you're helping to get them to a particular goal, or what do you think? Is it different for different people according to different times that they have to train and how much time they have to commit to their diet and things? How does that work for you?
So that's a great question because I think managing expectations is a big part of coaching. And everybody wants the body composition that they want tomorrow. And I think where men struggle is a lot of them think they have more muscle underneath the body fat than they really do. And I'm laughing because they laugh. I'm not laughing at you guys. They laugh because the cycle of a man in the gym is he diets down to get really lean only to feel smaller and skinny fat. And then once he realizes that, he's like, oh, I need to go build muscle. So he goes through the bulking process, probably more of a dirty bulk where he justifies eating garbage, gets too big, decides he's too fat, has to crash diet that off, and then ends up in the same place. Every man has been through this at some point in their life, usually in their teenage years and stuff like this. So I kind of reframe their mindset. I'm like, listen, we can very, very much obtain the sculpted, muscular look that you want and lose body fat without adding gobs of fat and looking sloppy. It just takes a lot longer. Once they understand that, it will start to set in. Sometimes they freak out and they want it to happen faster, as we all do. But it's just reiterating to them that this is a slower process. It will happen. Chill out. We don't rapidly gain muscle. And if you eat more, it doesn't force feed or force grow the muscle. Just like if you crash diet calories, it doesn't speed up your fat loss. So
Yeah.
getting guys to understand that part is really the biggest thing.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Do you when you're working with guys that have come from a place? I think sometimes, certainly when guys are coming to me for with testosterone deficiency and that then gets treated, one of the big things I see is a change in mindset and self-confidence. You know, they'll walk in with a bit of a swagger. They'll walk in and they'll be telling me about new achievements that they've made in their personal, sometimes their working life, sometimes the gym, and you know, it's really great to hear some of those processes. How do you see? I mean, I'm guessing you see that represented a lot in your work, and you're probably in a better position to hear about all those great stories as well, be part of them.
Yes, there's nothing cooler than um, you just notice like his energy changes. He does become more confident, and like the way he talks and presents himself has a lot more assertion than it used to. And even his voice will get deeper. Like we both know Dave Lee, who's very open about how his voice used to be, and now he sounds like this, godlike figure from coming from the sky. So that
You'll hear
plays
me say that,
into who
man.
they are in the gym. Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, "Yes, that's right. I am very godlike." He'll agree with us. Um,
With that.
but that carries over like into the rest of their lives, and then it's not like I'm attracted to them, but you feed off that energy and you're like, oh wow, like this is awesome, like this person is becoming more of who they either used to be or they're growing into their potential as a man, and you can just tell, even if they don't say anything, they feel it, they know it's happening, and so that gets them to kind of seek out stuff they maybe never did before, like you know opportunities, or work stuff, or even adventures, or being spontaneous. Like it's really really fucking cool.
And I think that sort of really, I mean, you've hit almost every nail on the head there. I think one of the things that guys often will say to me when I'm taking the history initially will be like, I'm really struggling to make decisions. Like, even if I think something's a good idea, I can't quite like go along with it, and that spontaneity will disappear. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things you change, like that you see changing early on in from my experience. And even just getting the history first time off, that we kind of staring at the floor half the time and kind of here because their partner told them to be, and just a bit ugh. But in the time frame, guys that I've been working with really seems to vary quite a lot. Sometimes I've got one guy who at 4 months was like looking at his watch and being like, "Doc, you sure about this? Is this a thing?" And I was kind of like holding fast, being like, "Yeah, sure, it'll be fine." And then 2 months later, actually for him, it wasn't really until 6 months that it all just started really happening for him. And we had to do quite a lot of almost life coaching with him, because we think he's been living with low testosterone for probably a good 15 or so years, like significantly low testosterone. But it had been untreated for so long that actually part of it was patterning, part of it was behavioral, and he kind of needed to break through some of those boundaries, because actually, like you'll say, testosterone isn't going to do it all for you. You've got to put the work in, you've got to put the hours in, you've got to eat right, and you've got to be open to a change in that mindset, I guess, as well. Um, so yeah, that's certainly something that I'm sort of seeing in my limited role within a clinical space. But yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because like you don't really, no one talks about this with women. Like, if women go through menopause or they go on hormone replacement, like no one makes it a thing the way it's made to be like a thing like with guys. And I've been on TRT for like 2 years, and nobody's really cared. Not that they don't care, but like it's more like that it's not in their nature to ask the questions that would be asked of a guy if he goes on TRT, like, oh my gosh, like, you know, how is it? Like, what have you noticed? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, people are like, oh, okay, you've been on testosterone. They think I look the way I do because I'm on testosterone. And no one talks about all the other emotional benefits. And a lot of the guys are like that too
Yeah.
because of those social stigmas. But guys don't realize just how neuroprotective it is to be on testosterone. They just think of like a lot of the aesthetic stuff, or they think about their erection, which it can be related, but oftentimes, as you know, that's not really the glaring problem when it comes to sexual dysfunction.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I suppose we can't talk to Ali Gilbert without sort of referencing that point there of normalising boner talk. So this seems to be one of your strap lines among many. Um, about that, tell us, Ali, talk through, please. Give us some more information about why that's such an important subject for you.
I think because, diffusing the awkward nature of talking about it, I will literally just talk about it with guys because they usually will think if my member is working properly, I must not have low testosterone. And so, therefore, they will dismiss any of the other symptoms that they have, such as brain fog, as you mentioned, such as lack of drive and motivation, and maybe feeling more wimpy or stuff like that, and tired and lethargic. And they'll think, well, I'm depressed. And then maybe they might get on antidepressants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we know that many antidepressants affect erection strength or affect erection frequency. So now we're left with them thinking, well, damn, now my penis is not working. And then they're even more depressed when literally it could have been rectifying the testosterone because the testosterone is needed for all the symptoms that they were experiencing, but instead they thought it was for depression.
Yeah.
So most guys who are young, they think they're just isolated and alone because they're experiencing this, but they're actually not. It's quite common because there usually is three things that will affect erection. One of them, I call them three B's: blood flow, biochemistry, or the brain. So blood flow, we know if you're healthy, if you're not smoking, if you're got good blood pressure, probably good in that department. That's usually more older guys as well. Biochemistry, that would be testosterone. Testosterone can play a small part in, erection strength and everything. But then also the brain, the stress. So the impact that stress has on a man's ability to produce an erection is so much bigger than they ever realize. And they don't give it enough credit because they want to overcome it. They don't want to necessarily think something's wrong. And the analogy that I use is if you're squatting in the gym, you're doing a 1 rep max, you are literally coming up from the ground, your eyes are bulging out of your sockets, you're holding your breath, you're about to poop your pants, and then your love interest walks in front of you and is like, "Yo, let's go. Let's get it on." Like, being able to shift gears right then and there is really difficult to pop an erection like mid-set. And that's the same impact that stress has on the body. Like, your body's just trying to survive. It's not going to try and procreate.
Yeah, you
So,
painted such a picture there. I was right there with you. Yeah, but yeah, no, I completely, I think that's a really good way of putting it as well, actually, because I think there's also a lot of, I think guys can take from from sort of isolated episodes of some erectile dysfunction, and they can really those episodes can stick with them for a really long time, and it may have been a really memorable event for them. And I think those things can have some pretty long-lasting, pretty scarring damage as well. So I think from a brain point of view, yeah, that's really important, and it's an important one to sort of discourage because. I have actually fallen foul of not discussing that enough with a patient of mine who had been stabilised on treatment for nearly a year, I think, and had really good levels. He was taking a PDE5 inhibitor daily, and I was kind of thinking, why are we not in the right space? And actually, he just had a really traumatic event a few years ago with a girlfriend, and he kind of hadn't really managed to clamber over it. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's kind of taking the whole situation, making it really easy to talk about, and I think sometimes as clinicians we can kind of almost detach a little bit of the emotions from it and just make it a really tick box, and actually we probably need to dig into it a little bit deeper to make sure that we're getting all the information we need to sort of provide the support that we need to with it. So yeah, no, and I think probably actually the information that you get from the guys that you're working with, it must be so key because you're talking to them in a sort of a less formal environment and everything as well, and you are as open about normalising donor talk as you are. So yeah, no, I can only imagine that is really super useful for them. So I can't have opened with that in your bio and not talking about the anogenital distance. Can you tell us a little bit more about this, please, and why it was that you discussed this at a point?
yes. So, when women are born, the distance between the vagina and the anus is really short. So in guys, it's really far from the butt to the ball sack. So that is known as the anogenital distance, and I figure it's a great acronym just to think of my initials because that's how you're going to remember it. And we are seeing, but there are studies showing that that distance is decreasing in men and therefore making them feminized due to the exposure of phthalates and fake hormones and things that disrupt the endocrine system. And this is one of those really weird concepts because it comes across as crazy and like, how could that ever happen? But a woman pregnant with a male fetus can affect his sperm production as an adult man just by her exposure to these toxic things alone. which is so far-fetched to think, but it's so true because they have the studies to back it up. Like it's actually happening because they can measure the phthalates in the sac. So that distance, guys, go home, measure your
Yeah.
taint, see how it is.
And that's a pretty frightening, frightening thought, isn't it? Because it's something so beyond your control. Um, but I think one of the things I often get asked by guys are like, so why is you know, I'm 35 years old, I've never touched steroids, I don't drink, I'm not taking opiates, I don't do drugs, like, why do I have a super low testosterone, a super low free testosterone? And I think that's one of the things, you know, that we're still kind of struggling to really understand. And I think the likelihood is that it's multifactorial. There was a cool article in Forbes years ago that sort of drew out about, you know, like you mentioned, phthalates, and there have been lots of papers on those, lots of endocrine disrupting chemicals, even looking at our social construct. You know, I think there have been some interesting papers relating to men who are cohabiting with their pregnant partners and their partners who've got small babies, and their testosterone levels dropping during that time period. I mean, that's crazy. But surely that was also happening 40 years ago when guys were cohabiting with young families and things as well. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what science manages to unfold about what it is that's causing this progressive decline in testosterone levels. You see kind of occasional papers where people are trying to fob it off it as you know, we're measuring them differently, or our technology is becoming more sensitive to measure them differently and things. But and our response across the board and around the world just seems to be reducing the normal level, as opposed to taking that harder look into you know, what else
So
is
annoying.
going on. But I think one thing, like on the men's health and on the women's health, certainly in the UK, we are becoming more alive to hormonal changes. And I think when we met in Florida, I remember you saying that actually, you know, women's health wasn't done so well in the States, which in the UK I would say was kind of flipped on its head. Women have just got testosterone acknowledged as part of women's hormonal part of a treatment that might be available for women and their HRT. Whereas actually a lot of family doctors, a lot of general practitioners would be quite unsighted and unprepared to manage testosterone deficiency in primary healthcare, so they get sent off to endocrinology. I think it's similar with you guys, over your side of the pond, where endocrinologists have a much lower threshold for treatment. I have yet quite to understand that, because I think one of the endocrinologists I chatted to recently said, well, I'm sure a lot of guys would feel better on testosterone replacement therapy. And I was waiting for the end of his sentence and didn't get one. And I said, yeah, but surely that would be a good thing when we know that it's cardiac, it's bone mineral density. But there wasn't a rest of the sentence. So it was so strange, so strange. But yeah. So, yeah, I guess I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you so much, and that I absolutely cannot wait for your virtual Silverback Summit incoming. It's next week, right? It's coming up. I don't know when it will be in comparison to when we
Couple weeks, yeah.
did. Yeah. And really can't wait for Texas. It's going to be amazing. And yeah, just wanted to say a really big thank you so much for taking the time today to do this recording with me, so that I can yeah, I can
Of
share it.
course.
But yeah, fabulous.
Yes, there's not many women in the men's health space, so it's always fun to, go back and forth with what we see and everything because we are a small group of us.
Yeah, yeah, you're